today I have the honor and privilege of speaking with one of the most iconic and respected figures in the real estate industry, widely recognized as a pioneer in innovative marketing systems. He is the former CEO of Realtor.com. He has earned some of the industry's highest honors, including induction into the RISMedia Hall of Fame and recognition as one of the National Association of Realtors' top 25 industry leaders. Inman described Allan as a creative genius in marketing. Now, let's take a few moments to learn more about his journey and some of the incredible contributions he has made to the industry, like the buyer's agency, artificial intelligence, and also luxury real estate. Now, first of all, thank you so much for accepting my invitation and being here with us today, Mr. Allan Dalton.
Well, Peter, thank you very much for that kind and overly generous introduction. Although I must say I don't like being teased. And the fact that you're in Hawaii, but you told me we can only do this on Zoom, that's really teasing somebody because we all love Hawaii. And I envy your situation in life. So it's great to be with you. Congratulations on the impact that you have made on the industry, not just nationally, but globally, and especially in the luxury space. So it's great to be with you here, Peter.
Thank you. Thank you, Allan. So my first question, Allan, why? Why real estate? Why did you decide to enter into this industry?
Well, it's probably like maybe others. First of all, when I've done some seminars over the years, I've often asked agents in the audience and my colleagues, how many of you had a strategy when you were in high school or college that you were going to sell real estate? Raise your hands, other than if your family was in the business. And if there's 500 people, maybe 3 people raise their hands. So I think most of us, we never in high school or college intended to sell real estate, but we ended up in real estate for a variety of reasons. My reason was this. I was in the insurance business. I was successful. I bought a home in Medfield, Massachusetts. The broker recruited me, and that began my journey because even though I was successful in life insurance, I never loved it because it was always talking about people dying, becoming disabled, and real estate just seemed a much more enjoyable, pleasant environment to be in. And I also thought I could be successful in the real estate business, so I made that transition many years ago.
Well, made totally sense. Okay. I also know that you were a former VP with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. If you don't mind, what was your main role?
Well, my actual title was I was Senior Vice President of Research and Development for both Berkshire Hathaway Home Services and Home Services of America. And I was recruited by the one and only Gino Blafari. It was named #1 in the Swan Pool Registry in 2023. And the reason I was very proud to have that position is because I think the industry has been underserved when it comes to research and development. We're basically an instant gratification, transaction to transaction driven industry. In fact, if you were to get on the phone and call most real estate brokerages or brands and say, hi, could you please connect me to your research and development division? Okay, that would be confusing to people because most brands and brokers have never had a research and development division, and instead they rely upon the great research and development of NAR. So yes, that was a title I had for several years, head of research and development for both Berkshire Hathaway Home Services and Home Service of America. I learned a lot, and it was great being part of that incredible organization.
Okay. So as a former CEO of Realtor.com, Realtor.com has impacted the real estate industry greatly. What was your experience?
Well, it was exciting. it was exciting being the CEO during those years for about 6 years, starting in 2001, because Realtor.com at that time wasn't initially beloved. In fact, I received wonderful compensation, but looking back, I probably should have also asked for combat pay, because there was so much resentment. Because what we were facing, Peter, during that transformational years, was a lot of the big brokers were against Realtor.com because it evened the playing field. A lot of top producers didn't like Realtor.com because they felt they were subsidizing the site for lower producers who were getting free advertising. Then you had small companies thinking that the big companies, okay, were taking advantage of it, and the big companies thought they were subsidizing, and as I said, evening the playing field. Then you even had 847 MLSs who felt, wait a minute, they're taking our data. And so it was a very, very complicated and politically contentious time. And yet, for whatever reason, I found it very exciting because I'm a competitive. Years ago, I was drafted by the Boston Celtics. I'm used to having opposition and having to fight for things. So it was exhilarating being in a position where people both loved you and some people resented you. So it was exciting, very exciting times. But I think it was great for the industry because it basically elevated and made more transparent the information we provide consumer. And I've always considered myself a consumerist.
Oh, I see. I understand. Yeah, I have so many things, agents and brokers talking about realtor.com, but I wanted to have some insightful, explanation. And thank you. Thank you for that. Now, Alan, I'm so excited because I want to hear you talk about your new book, Agent AI Gent. I am really excited. That's a magnificent book. So why did you decide to write this book, especially nowadays?
Well, thank you for asking that. And when I turn on TV and I see world famous writers showing their book, I don't feel guilty doing the same thing. So the book is Agent to AI Gent. Now, that doesn't mean that agents are going to be half human and half machine. What it means is that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for realtors to properly leverage AI. Now, when I say properly leverage AI, all of my research and my background in the industry, years ago, I was the president and co-owner of a company. We built to 60 offices before we sold it. I was president of a Sotheby's brokerage. I was the president of a Better Homes and Gardens. I was CEO of Real Living and so forth. So I've had a lot of exposure to the industry. And based on that exposure, I'm at this conclusion right now that the industry, where some people may think AI will be disruptive, this can be the greatest opportunity for realtors to elevate their incomes and to provide more value if they work properly with it. Now, what do I mean by working properly with it? About, I think, 12 or 15 years ago, I secured the URL Real Estate Trusted Advisor. And the reason I did is that because I anticipated that the public at times doesn't think there's enough value in a real estate transaction. And so when we looked at all of the metrics, the fact that 90% of consumers say they're going to go back to their agent, but only 10% do. When the fact that I used to hear, and I've been saying this now for 20 years, it's in my books. Well, I heard so many of my colleagues saying, oh, I've got to do a better job, Peter, of keeping in touch with my past clients. Well, that means you're the past agent. And this isn't just semantics, because the real estate industry defined a client transactionally, other than in Florida. That means that during a transaction, you're my client. After the transaction, you're my past client. Therefore, before a transaction, you're a prospect. So therefore, I'm going to arrange my career. These are my ones, these are my twos, these are my threes, these are my huts, because I think that the word client only appears during the transaction. And that has had a profound impact. Now, I go back to the concept of a real estate trusted advisor. Even though I own that URL, I don't talk about that as much anymore for this reason. Because if I went to everybody in your organization, all the Lux executives, all over the world, people in your own company, and if I were to say to them, tell me where do you think real estate values will be in 3 years in Maui? Do you think they'd ask somebody in their office, or do you think they might go to AI? They'll probably go to artificial intelligence. Well, if realtors themselves are going to artificial intelligence, where the heck do we think the consumer is going to go? What that means is this: the consumer will not require agents to the same degree for information and advice. They'll need agents to interpret advice and to consult with them. That's why I also own the URL, for example, real estate consulting certification, and a lot of consulting URLs for real estate. But agents will not be able to consult unless they're using artificial intelligence, because the consumer will be more evolved in their information that they get in 7 seconds, their data, their predictive data, their market analysis, than the agent. And so in writing the book AI, one of my chapters is what is the best and highest use of artificial intelligence? And I asked AI I prompted a few questions. And here are some of the questions, some of the prompts. If real estate agents don't start doing consultations, because remember, several years ago, the average homeowner remained in the home for 6 years. Now it's 11.9, 11.2 years. I don't think enough people in the industry have asked themselves this question. If people now are in their home almost twice as long, how does that have to change our value proposition? And what it means is that in terms of sustaining these relationships, you've got to evolve from being transactional to relational, but it's not just as simple as that. You have to bring great value. You're not going to be bringing as much informational value. You're not going to be bringing as much advisory value. You're going to have to bring consultative value, but you're not going to be able to consult intelligently unless you're using AI, because the consumer will be ahead of you. So I prompted AI as I began to say, what will happen to real estate professionals in the years to come if they don't start doing serious consultation during the time when people are not on the market? Within seconds, the response came back as follows: they will not survive. Just as, and I cut and paste this is in the book. I cut and paste this. Just as travel agents did not survive unless they're advisors on luxury and they're mapping out tours and not booking. Life insurance agents did not survive because they became financial planners. In fact, I created the real estate planning system for a number of brands. And they said, and doctors will struggle unless they become more proactive other than surgeons. So we all know that AI will transform a lot of things. And the other thing that's happening is this. I don't know about Hawaii, but I'll say this. I may not be right, but I'm convinced more buyers over the next 20 years will go directly to the listing agent than the last 20 years. And in addition to this, so what's going to happen? People who play real estate checkers will say this: well, that just means listings are all the more important. That's a checkers player. The chess player thinks this way. When homeowners see that the buyer didn't need representation, then why do I need it? Because once you weaken either side of the symmetry, if you don't have symmetrical value, you're not going to have asymmetrical value. If you don't have a strong defense attorney, you don't need a strong plaintiff attorney. If there's a strong offense, you need a strong defense. So already there's a little bit of a slipperage in perceived need for a buyer agent. Then I prompted ChatGPT with this: how will artificial intelligence, this is not from me, this is from artificial intelligence. How will artificial intelligence, Peter, now I didn't put Peter in, but for this, I'll say it. How will artificial intelligence impact for sale by owner market share? And it said, it's in my book, it will go from 6 to 7% to 15 to 20%. What that means is this. If real estate agents, and the book's a lot about this, and I show exactly how to do this. If real estate agents only use AI to write ads, to do brochures, to do videos, to do lead gen, to use their CRM, to do predictive data, if those are the only reasons they're using it to write videos, that's going to be a big problem. They have to use, in my opinion, they're going to have to use artificial intelligence to increase their knowledge, their intelligence, and to do it in concert with their clients. And they're going to have to use AI to have clients before there's a transactional need. So that was the reason why. And the reason I felt that I was very suited for reading, I'll end with this because I don't want this to be a long-winded diatribe here, Peter, but the reason I felt very suited and called upon, not to sound too missionary, but I did feel this way, to write the book is for this reason. At my age, 76, at my stage, because I retired from that position, now I'm doing consulting, I don't know other real estate leaders, CEOs, brokers, presidents, top producers, people like yourself, team leaders, who could ever take 4 to 6 months of research to tackle this incredibly complex subject and simplify it and make it easy to understand. Because if they did, they wouldn't be successful. They don't have the time. And then some of the people in real estate who do have the time, they don't have the deep industry knowledge, or they're not journalists. I have written 5 books. I won the High School of Boston Journalism Award. So it basically worked with my background. Industry knowledge, CEO of Realtor.com, built a company with my partner, 60 offices. Mike Ferry dedicated his book to me. So I have a deep real estate experience, but I'm also a writer. I'm also a researcher. And so when you put all of that together, I felt, gee, what the best and highest use of my time, even at my age right now, is to tackle this incredible transformational subject and make it easy so that agents can spend, they don't have 6 months, they can spend $29 or $9 for the ebook. And it's been described as like a course. It's not just a book, it's a resource. And so, and then within the book, for example, I have segments where we examine how financial advisors are using AI. It's completely different. How psychologists, other people who are relational, they're using it completely different. And even ChatGPT talks about this. It's amazingly how they're different, and they're ahead of the game in terms of bringing educational value. And then there's all the different ways, the prompts, how to use it for business planning and CRMs, and there's 20-something chapters. So it's all there. And thank you for the opportunity for me to extol its virtues.
Oh, no. You're more than welcome. And I agree with you. It's complicated. And many agents, they are using it. Maybe like 90% of the agents are using it like ChatGPT for like home descriptions,
Right.
trying to get leads, trying to get clients, but that's about it. So they
Peter,
don't have a deep understanding of the subject.
Yes, Peter, they're using it, in my opinion, in my research, and there's a lot of case studies of top people there. In fact, I also brought in a person, I think he's got the #1 AI podcast, Rajiv Saja, okay? He speaks all over the country. He's got a top podcast, but I have a lot of case studies as well. But I think from all of my research, the agents are more approaching it, how can this help me? How can this make my life easier? How can this make my business more efficient? As opposed to how can this help my clients? And money follows value. And the law of compensation is that compensation is in direct proportion to the quantity and quality of service and value rendered. Whereas these other professionals, because I show all the prompts, it's almost never do you hear the word client within a realtor prompt. 90% of the prompts from these other professions. How can I help my client do this? My daughter's a clinical psychologist. I see what she did. How can I help my clients with this? How can I help them with this? How can I help better explain this? Okay, it's all about how can I better serve and bring more value personally, individually. And the other thing I talk about is this. Here's where AI can help. I've come up with this concept of how the real estate industry needs to examine how it gets paid. You've heard the expression, Peter, well, let me ask you, have you ever heard the expression, the 80-20 law?
Yeah, by Wilfredo Pareto, yes.
What is it? What do you know the 80-20 law to be?
Well, for example, in this industry, it's like 20% of the agents produces like 80% of the results, and vice versa.
Exactly. And then some people even say 15% do 85%. Now, people may think that that's all businesses, but it isn't. 20% of doctors don't make more than the other 80%. 20% of lawyers don't make more than the other 20%. 20% of pharmaceutical salespeople don't make more than the other 80%. Why does that exist in real estate? Why has that syndrome been around for 50 years? Here's why. Because the real estate business model either doesn't work for the other 80% or the other 80% won't use it. And the reason they won't use it is because it's not who they are. So here's some of the way I've approached the new math. Here's the questions, and I'll ask you. Let's make this as interactive as we can, Peter. From your knowledge, what percentage of real estate agents do you think when they go on a listing get the listing when they go on the appointment?
I would say, you say in general?
Yeah.
I would say like 10%.
Only 10% get the listing?
What we are talking about all the real estate agents. Like,
No, what I'm saying is that when one of the agents in your office goes on a listing call, what percentage of the time do they get that listing?
70%.
Okay. I saw once, I think it was Zillow, it was 82% nationally. And a lot of agents tell me 90%. I've had people say 95%. But even if it's 70%, do you know what that tells us, Peter? The industry doesn't have a listing presentation problem. Not to mention the fact that no one wants a listing presentation. They want marketing proposals. But anyway. And so how many years have we spent teaching agents how to make listing presentations? It's a solution in search of a problem that doesn't exist. There's no place in Vegas that you get 70% odds. So what that tells us is this. The challenge that the 80% have, and even the 20% who do 80%, is not their listing presentation. They need to have more appointments. Would you agree with that?
100%.
So now let's talk about where the agents get their appointments. What percentage of the appointments that agents get on a listing call do you think is from this sphere of influence?
Sphere influence.
And referrals.
Yeah, referrals. Well, some of the agents are like 87%.
Okay, now Hawaii could be different, but when I've asked around the country, I'm usually told 80 to 90% of my listings come from my sphere of influence and my referrals. So what that tells you is that that's the only business model that works. Now what's the average commission? Not the commission split. What would you say was the average amount of money one of the agents in Honolulu makes if their listing sells? 20,000, 10,000? How many?
No, right here, right now, based on the average, it's around like $18,000 to $20,000.
Okay, let's call it $20,000. Okay, let's say they get 80%. That means that if they saw 10 people, they'd get 8 listings. They made $160,000. But a lot of agents aren't even making 160. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, so do you know what that tells us? That those people, they advised 10 people over the whole year. Oh my God. Imagine if somebody was a doctor and they advised 10 people, they consulted, or a lawyer. And so they're so much better educated, they have so much more value, but the conventional business model and the old math doesn't work for them because they saw 10 people, they got 8 listings, and they made $160,000 out of the whole year, okay? because they have a sphere of influence, but they haven't influenced their sphere. Now, let's say that that same agent, instead of just seeing 10 people, had 2 consultations a week, 100 a year. Now, if they make $100,000 and if they work 40 hours a week, that means they're making $50 an hour. If they made 50,000, they're making $25 an hour. If they sat with 2 people a week, just to give them an update in the market, home improvement ideas, home maintenance ideas, how to appeal your property taxes, whatever. How many listings with that? So I ask people, here's what they tell me. Now, only 10% move. So I'll ask, of those 10 people who move, how many more listings do you think you'd get? I get at least 8. Well, that's another 160,000. And guess what? But you spent 100 hours. You know what that tells us? That means you're making $1,600 an hour. Now, let me ask you this, Peter. If I said to you, if you were making 80 grand a year, if I said, by the way, I'll pay you $300,000 a year, $200,000 a year, if you meet with 2 people a week and consult with them when they're not on the market, and I gave you a salary, would you take that job? Yeah, most would. But you've got to give yourself that job. So now, but here's the irony. Here's why they're not doing it, because they're not trained that way. They're trained on the old math. And here's what they don't realize. The public wants to talk about real estate with agents more than real estate agents want to talk to the public. I may not be right, but I'm convinced, Peter, more consumers go up to realtors and ask, how's the market? Then real estate agents go up to consumers and say, would you like to know how the market is? The public can't get enough of talking about real estate. And when they ask people, it just shows the agents don't want to talk about how's the market. It's a buyer's market, but they're a seller. It's a seller's market, but they're a buyer. Well, that depends if you're buying, selling, or investing. Who wants their question being answered with another question? Nobody. Because they've never used that as an opportunity to end up by saying, and by the way, Peter, I'd love you to become one of my real estate clients. Well, Allan, we're not going to move for 10 years. No, this has nothing to do with that. I meet with my people. We go over home improvement ideas, market updates. This is not rocket science. This is they're more likely to be successful at this than calling FSBOs, calling expireds, and so forth and so on. But if they're going to do the consultation, they need AI, not this book, but they need AI and ChatGPT and other platforms so they can go in there and say, by the way, I go over 5 things. The first, we're going to go over the market updates. Let's go over the national market. Let's go in Hawaii. Let's go over the global market. Let's go over the national market. Let's go over Hawaii. Now, where are they going to get that? Are they going to get that from Susan next to them or Peter? No, they're going to go to ChatGPT. Can anyone do that? So now they've got a little file for their appointment. The next thing, give me the best home improvement ideas for a condo in Hawaii. They're getting that in 7 seconds. But all they're seeing a year is 10 people, because that's the old math. That's how they can use AI now to transform, because here's what they've been told by every coach. Oh, you've got to treat your business like a business. Oh, let me write that one down. Oh, I didn't know that. Who's my daddy? No, treat your business like a professional practice, because a business has customers and a practice has clients. And you've been calling people past clients. You're not getting it. But these other people that are using AI, they're all using it. They're ahead of us. Just like there's no more life insurance agents, they became financial planners, all right? Then we're going to go over home maintenance. Oh, we're also going to go over home savings. ChatGPT, what are some of the ways that people can save on their housing costs? Boom. Then you're going to go over real estate planning. I have a planning guide for that. And then you're going to say, Peter, did you find tonight beneficial? Oh, yeah. Is there anyone else that you know that might like the service? Now, here's the transformation. Every realtor talks this way. My sphere of influence. You've heard that, right, Peter? But no one talks about my spheres of influence. It's not just your sphere of influence. It's how can you influence the spheres of influence of people in your sphere? Because I may know one person who plays in a tennis or a bowling league, but all of them know 200 other people. So I have 200 people in my sphere, but you've got 200 in your sphere. And 200 people, that's 40,000 people. Now, you're not going to get 40,000 listings, but you're not going to get referrals unless you bring in more value. And when
And
somebody
that makes
says,
sense.
excuse me?
What you say, they have a center, sphere of influence, but they are not influencing that sphere. That's
That's
the
what I'm
reason they're
saying.
not getting
Because
business.
no
Yes.
one's ever talked to them about, see, brokers talk about market share, but the only reason there's market share is because of sphere of influence share. They have to increase their sphere of influence share, but not just with their sphere, with all of the people in their sphere, with their spheres. But the people in this sphere aren't going to say, oh, by the way, you've got to meet my friend Peter. We met him at the beach the other day or at the cookout, and we asked him, how's the market? And he said, oh, it's a low inventory market. Oh my God, you got to meet with them. No, but they're going to say this. Oh, we're meeting with Peter. We're appealing our property taxes. Oh, we're going through a renovation because Peter showed us how we're not moving for 2 years, how we can maximize our value. And he's also referring us to general contractor. You got to see this guy. Oh, we've gone over this or we've gone over that. We're not bringing enough consultative value. And you just can't be I'm a real estate trusted advisor. It's not going to be enough. You've got to use AI to really be, and that's why I'm putting together a whole course. It's premature, so I'm not selling anything here. But every aspect of getting appointments, consulting with people, getting referrals, because that's the new math. Because if you get 8 now, how many people that you list from your consultant are going to buy? Well, how? Gee, that's 3 more. How many people are going to want a home improvement? Gee, a third. Well, you're going to get referrals from the general contractors. These are not new concepts because everybody does some of this, but no one has packaged it. I have a whole program that's packaged on exactly how to do that for the clients that I serve, and it's exclusive to them. But so that's the exciting thing about AI. It's the opposite of disrupting. It can be the greatest friend and the greatest advocate for agent value if it's used intelligently, but it's got to be beyond property descriptions and predictive data. It's got to be to empower you so when you meet, okay, you're going over real valuable information.
Information. And that's the world right now. AI. It doesn't matter
Without a
what.
doubt.
Yes. Yes. Anything else that you want to touch in your book?
Well, I've already felt I've spoken too much, but in the book, no, it's just I'm very pleased with all that it addresses, and it's simplified, and everything is modularized. So there's one thing: how to use AI to be your PR machine, how to become the CEO of your AI division, how to use AI for community videos, how to use it for market analysis, how, there's almost every conceivable aspect of it. But my favorite chapter is how to use it to really help you make the transformation from just a transactional real estate salesperson. See, when we all first received our real estate license, it read real estate salesperson. It didn't say real estate consultant. And it's just not semantics. There's a salesperson selling a product. A consulting is helping people arrive at the best decisions. But these decisions shouldn't just be when they're ready to buy or sell. Because if we don't establish and fortify client relationships before there's a transactional need, increasingly, like I just went to the hospital for a back situation, but in the book I did some research, like AI right now is superior to doctors in diagnosis. The Beth Israel Boston Hospital in Boston, it's in the book. They did an experiment. They had a patient they had to diagnose, and they first asked several doctors to diagnose. Then they used AI, and then they didn't even use AI. It's deep learning, and the best results was when they weren't even using the doctors. The next best was with the AI. Now, in the beginning of the book, when I was CEO of Realtor.com, I commissioned a consulting company to do this research for me. Where do American and North American homeowners go for real estate advice? Number 1 was family and friends. Number 2 was financial advisors. This isn't advice in on how to price, just advice in general about real estate. And number 3 was real estate professionals. So that's in the book. So then I went to ChatGPT and I asked this question. If real estate agents don't effectively use AI in the way that we talk about in the book, where will the order be? It's right in there. It's all I did is cut and paste. AI will be number 1, then family, then friends, then financial advisors, and real estate agents will be number 5. Unless people think AI doesn't know what they're talking about, then good luck. Then the next thing was this: what will happen if they use AI? Real estate agents will be number 1. They'll turn to agents number 1. These are macro ideas. This isn't little parlor games. Oh, if somebody leans forward on a presentation, you should lean forward. Or if somebody's audio, or Peter, how does this sound to you? And how does this look to you? These little parlor games and reading people's personalities. These are big macro issues, okay? This is like making sure that people go to the next step using AI. And but the other book that we talked about was The Buyer Agent Be Aware, if you want to talk about that book.
Oh yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, about the book. Yep, buyer's agent, be aware, because I believe, especially nowadays, it is super important, especially the agency part. Well, I think everything, but the agency, because I believe, again, I've been in the industry for 28 years, and I believe that agents, they are not bringing value when they are representing the buyer. They just want to go, they want to show house, they just desperate. They don't do like a consultation. The
They don't.
presentation is something
Well,
basic.
they call it that. They
Yeah,
call
a
it that,
presentation.
but
And it is not even the right word. Yeah, I agree. But they just, what do you need? What do you want to buy? How many home? How many bathroom? How many baths? But that's about it. And they just want to go and show homes. They don't have like a process, step by step process. And I was amazed when I read that in your book. So yes, please, can you expand a little bit more about
yeah.
that?
Well, before we jump right, I'll say one other thing about the AI as it relates to luxury agents, because that's your forte, and that's much of your esteemed audience. Here's how AI is going to help. What's amazing to me is a lot of agents that I knew, and I used to be president of Sotheby's, and I've always been in upscale markets other than when I grew up. In fact, that was always one of the great lines when I was on luxury listings. I used to say to homeowners, in fact, my partner and I, we listed President Nixon's home. I used to always say this when I was on an estate listing. By the way, folks, just so you know, I'm very comfortable in a home of this size and aesthetic grandeur because I grew up in a similar size home. Now, there were 6 other families living with us. They used to love that joke. But anyway, here's what I used to always say about luxury. A lot of times the home was more luxurious than the agent's language. It almost seemed as though the industry only had 6 words to describe every home. Your home is lovely, beautiful, charming, gracious, spacious, and elegant. And if somebody's got a multi-million-dollar home, I think they deserve more than somebody saying, you've got a beautiful home. Because guess who else is saying that? The pizza delivery person from Domino's who brings pizza to the home is going to say, you've got a beautiful home. People deserve more, but thankfully, because of AI and ChatGPT, people are going to learn how to speak more intelligently and respectfully. We're going to stop having agents using the word like comps. Actually, using the word comps is like saying to a homeowner, let's take a look at some comparable children. They're going to say instead, let's take a look at properties which buyers will be evaluating at the same time they're evaluating your home, okay? But getting back to, so I'm thrilled on how AI can help agents better articulate the lifestyle nuances of a property, and they can basically escape and be emancipated from a vocabulary of 7, gracious, spacious, elegant, deep, and really get into nuance. But now let's talk to the buyer. No, I think buyer agents have done a lot better job of consulting with buyers than listing agents have with home sellers, because the listing presentation was more presentational. My 21-point listing presentation. I want to help you get the best price in the shortest period of time with the least convenience. I'd like to tell you a little about. So all of these commoditized cliches, these calcified cliches, have deprived agents from being more consultative. But when they worked with buyers, they had to be more fluid, more consultative, more examining needs. It was less about trying to sell themselves than trying to find out and learn about what the buyer wanted, right? But now with buyer agent changing in the contracts and compensation, now for the first time for many, not all people, but now they have to make a presentation of value. That is if they don't already, they lose out on the opportunity because the buyer goes directly to listing agent. So I put together in my book here, Buyer Agent Be Aware, the 7 A's of buyer agent value. And here's why. Number one, people like to have concepts and delivery systems packaged. People, even in something as simple, people don't want to go into McDonald's and have to say, yes, can I have 2 all beef patties, special sauce? No, it's a Big Mac. But before even a person presents their value, they have to understand their value. For years, I used to ask my agents and colleagues this question: who do you think provides more value to their client? A so-called listing agent, which is a disaster. We shouldn't be calling people listing agents. That almost invites buyers to go directly. Why wouldn't I go right to the listing agent? They know the most. It's so welcoming. It doesn't sound adversarial. Every person, no agent should ever again in their life ever say who's the listing agent, especially in front of a client. It diminishes the entire value of the industry because listing agents do more than that. They're a seller agent. They're a marketing agent. Every person listening to, especially we've got luxury agents saying who's the listing agent. It makes the industry it makes the industry look like the Confederation of Dunces because there's not enough value. Every agent does more than just list a home. That's what people did 150 years ago, but we do more than that because 150 years ago when we first started talking about listing agents, there wasn't the internet, there wasn't IDX, there wasn't brochures, there wasn't virtual tours. We haven't evolved, okay? So who has more value? Most agents will say the listing agent. No, the buyer agent. A case can be made has more value for this reason. First of all, who do you think has to have more knowledge of construction? The buyer agent or the listing agent? I would say the buyer agent because the listing agent has a fiduciary responsibility of just representing that property. Even though they've got to disclose, they're not there to attack it unless there's defects. But the buyer agent should be more knowledgeable about the quality of good. So more value there. Number one, which of the 2 agents has to have more community knowledge value? The buyer agent. See, you can list property and I could airlift you, Peter, to Chicago and you could list a home. But if you had never, even if you've never been there before, IDX, MLS, but if I said I want to start buying properties in 5 towns, you'd be lost because you have no community knowledge. So buyer agents has more community value, they have more construction value, okay, and they have equal negotiating value. But the industry was never forced before to have to explain their value because buyers wouldn't take the time. They want to go and see properties. It was a different cadence. But now we're going to have to do more to show value. And I put together, so I have a brochure for my clients, and it was the 7 A's of buyer agent value. And so if I met with you, we'd go like this. First of all, after I met you, I would open up by saying this: Peter, let me ask you this. What do you, by the way, because of our new ethics and laws, I can't show you property until we first agree to work together. Okay. Those are the guidelines in my company and so forth, whatever it is in the States. Okay. But that's basically everybody in our market right now who's a part of the same organization. So let me ask you this, Peter, we'll make it brief. And then I'm going to hand them my 7 A's of buyer value brochure. Let me begin by asking this question, Peter. What do you expect from your buyer agent? Now, why do I ask that question? Now, 99% of agents before there was buyer agency contracts would never have to bother that because what's the point? You're just going to start, what are you into? You're going to do consulting. You're not going to do a presentation. Now you're going to do a presentation. Now, why would you say, what do you expect? Here's why. because no buyer will ever be able to list all the value that a buyer agent represents. So after, well, I'd want this, I want to see the properties, I'd want to get a mortgage. No matter what they say, you can then say, but Peter, with all due respect, you're not expecting enough. We do a lot more than that. And that's why, to make it simple, we have 7 A's of buyer agent value. The first A here, because I like a little, the first A, off the top of my head, the first A here has to do with access, okay? No, the first A has to do with agency. Now, Peter, what that means is that, I don't know Hawaii, but in our state, what that means is that a seller agent represents a seller, a buyer agent represents a buyer. There's something sometimes called disclosed dual agents where they don't represent either, but they can serve, they can work with both, okay? But we're talking here about buyer agency. So I would be representing you. That means that Article 1 of the Code of Realtors, you and I will be as one, okay? It's as if I'm buying the home for myself. And so not the listing, not the industry, you, Peter. Let me give you another sense of what that means. What that means is this, Peter, and how seriously I take that. I'm not going to ask you this afternoon here in Honolulu what you're looking for, when you have to buy, what's your financial circumstances, until and unless you first ask me to represent you, Peter. Now, do you know why? Because if for any reason, now 90% of people select, if for any reason, Peter, that you didn't select me, and if I ended up representing somebody in a transaction with you, that information could be used against you. I could tell my seller, yeah, he's got to move in 2 weeks. He's being transferred. So I'm not going to ask you to represent, I'm not going to ask to represent you. I'm not going to ask you confidential information until you first ask me to represent you. How does that sound? Now, what I've just done is this, Peter. I've established trust, because a buyer agent has a greater challenge to establish trust than the so-called listing agent for this reason, the marketing agent, the seller agent, because a lot of the times the marketing agent already knows the homeowner, or they're in this circle. A lot of buyers are getting off a plane, Peter, they don't know you from Adam. Am I right? That's why. So the question is this: how do you establish trust in 2 minutes? I used to say that to home sellers. By the way, to the home seller, has anybody asked you why you're moving, that you met, or when you have to move by? Geez, I want to apologize for that. They should never do that, because if they don't represent you, that could be used against you. That's now the other thing in terms of, so that's agency. The next thing is going to do with access. I've made a science out of making sure my clients get access. A lot of people come to Hawaii, they have limited time to look at homes. They're going to get back on a plane, and they want to make sure they're optimizing their time recreationally. They don't want to waste time going up and down elevators on wild goose chase. So I've made it a practice over the 20 years to develop wonderful working relationships with the entire real estate community. Little things like turning the lights off, getting back to people. And then if you can't be here, I'll give you access, because I'll go in and I'll do virtual tours. You get that. The next thing is a prize. The prize is to help you in terms of market value. See, Peter, most agents in Hawaii, they'll give you what is called a buyer CMA, but that's not enough for my clients, because a buyer CMA, Peter, only gives you an estimate of fair market value. Part of the 7 A's, I also do a buyer, what I call an MMA, a buyer merchandising analysis. It will show you what you can do to increase the value. Because even though people predominantly move to Hawaii for lifestyle reasons, Peter, I want all of my clients to also look at this as an investment. And I want to make sure, I don't do this in every home we look at, but if you narrow in and zero in on a home, I will not only do a buyer CMA, I'll also show you things that you can do to exponentially increase the value. And by the way, I'll also use AI to do that. So that's it. Then the next thing is that in terms of we talked about the negotiating, we talked about the administration of it, and we talked about the after the sale value. So I don't want to make the whole thing, but the whole thing is basically showing, because most people, all they show is a timeline. You'll do this, then we'll do this, then you do escrow, then you do this, then you do that, then you have the counteroffer. People have a sense of that. That's not an issue. People have been able to find out how to buy homes. The issue is your value. And then that's something that my brochure that people could email to people before they get to Hawaii. And then open houses, because sometimes you can't talk to them the way you'd like to do. So what are you providing them that shows them, wait a minute, this is frustrating. I'm losing out on this. That shows what you do for people. So it's marketing and merchandising and organizing the value. And so there's a lot of that in the book and much more. So forgive me, it takes that long, but that's took me months to develop. And so if I took 10 or 15 minutes, so be it.
No. That's great, and I think that's what we call a value stacking, putting a lot of value, and that's what agents need nowadays, especially now with all the new regulations. We are if an agent talks to, I mean, a buyer talks to 5 agents, they're gonna listen the same thing. For example, that the MMA, that's amazing. The
Well,
marketing analysis.
I was always reminded of this, and we talked about this before. Years ago, I didn't go there, but I read in the Harvard Business Review, the dean suggested this, that every person in business should ask themselves 2 questions. Number one, what do I do that my competition does, but that I do better? And number 2, what do I do that none of my competitors do? So as the CEO of my company, I had, like 35 years ago, I did homes guides in 6 languages. One completely Korean, one Japanese, one English, Spanish. This is 35, 40 years ago. Because it wasn't enough just to say, we speak your language, 47 languages spoken, okay? We had all of my marketing in all the different languages 35 years ago because no one did that. I listed with my partner a condominium project with 10,000 condominiums because of that. But the thing is this, and so in terms of, I saw that everybody in the industry was using the letter CMA, right? Why would I want to do what everybody else does? And then I examined, what's the difference between a CMA and an MMA? A CMA gives you an estimate of value, of fair market value, and MMA does that and also shows you how you can increase your value. Because I know that's more important to people. So every single thing that I saw everybody else do, I said, wait a minute, do I want to just do what they're doing? Or is there a better way? People were talking about SEO. You've heard that term. Search engine optimization. I created a concept of seek engine optimization. And I use programs like Chalk Digital. People talk about, oh, I serve the community. People in Kailua don't need you to serve the community because the doctor can do that, the teacher, the dentist. They need you to represent the community because Kailua is competing against Maui. And so when somebody says to you, well, Peter, what makes you different? I teach this. Peter, Allan, what makes you different? Peter, rather than focusing on how I'm different, my focus is always on what's different about your home. You see, I don't compete against other agents in Honolulu, but your property competes against other homes in the market. I actually cooperate with all the other agents, but your home doesn't cooperate, it competes. So the way that I'm different, and the way that the Lux Global Network is different, is how we're going to showcase what's different about your home. And that's why we're the #1 luxury organization in the world. Although, Peter, I know that means nothing to you unless we get you the best results. But see, it's all about turning it around, okay? Because most people, if somebody says, how are you different? They'll talk about themselves, okay?
Most of the time, they are confused because they're going to listen to 10 agents and all of them are #1. Well, I am #1. I am #1. I am #1. I am multi-million-dollar producer. So everybody's saying the same thing. So they're
Hey, Peter, if I can do this,
#1? Who's #1? Who's #1?
Peter, if I can do this, because I know you edit this and stuff like that. Many, many years ago, I put an ad in all the newspapers, and I showed 8 companies all saying they're #1. #1 this, #1 this, #1 that, #1 this, right? And then I had our sign in the middle that said how they're all part of my marketing system. How no company sells more than 10% of the homes. That's why we need to get everybody involved. And so I trained all of my agents. You know, we had 60 offices. I trained all of my agents. If somebody said, well, we want to talk to Cole, see, they're #1, right? Oh yeah, but not only are they number one, let me show you all the other companies that are number one. And it was like a comedy routine, and the homeowners loved it. But even though we've got 10 companies saying they're number one and 500 agents, no company sells more than 10%. That's why we have to get them all involved. And that's what our marketing system does. And back then, people didn't even say they had a market because they were trained to make listing presentations. They didn't even have a name of a marketing system. And and if somebody says, for example, if somebody said to me, well, we want to talk to Coldwell Banker, well, Coldwell Banker's already part of our marketing system. I never get defensive. They're already part of our marketing system. Because what you're doing is you're putting names on real estate companies. See, years ago, all of the agents in that company would have been representing you. They were all sub-agents to the home seller. That was 30 years ago. But today, only one company, only one agent in that company can represent you. Now, that one person, so you don't pick the company, you pick one agent in the company. No one else can fully represent you. Now, that person that you're going to pick to represent you, they're not going to sell you home because 95% of the time in Honolulu, the listing agent, so-called, doesn't bring the buyer. So you're not picking a company and you're not picking a salesperson. You're picking one marketing agent out of one company. Now, let me ask you this, Peter. Would you agree with me that that marketing agent is only as good as their marketing program? Now, let's talk about our marketing program. All marketing comes down to three words: range, reach, and influence. Every company has range. That's the internet. Reach is something called IDX. It's an online MLS. Everybody has that. What's going to determine your outcome? Because at Lux Global, we don't focus on selling more homes. Our focus is selling homes for more when we represent you. And the only way we can do that is do the best job of influencing the buyer and the buyer agent. And we can't influence them, Peter, unless you first influence me. So I'm going to go through some questions because I want you to influence me so I can influence the buyer agents. Because it doesn't matter to you which company brings the right buyer, does it? And it doesn't matter to me, and it doesn't matter to our marketing system. But see, most people they're talking about themselves. I did this, I did that. The public has developed antibodies to that. You'll never lose a listing if you do it this way, in my opinion. And especially the luxury. In fact, let me give you the great thing I used to say to the luxury. Because our company, we were a Sotheby's affiliate before there was a franchise. We were Better Homes and Gardens at Sotheby's. Here's what I used to say to homeowners on the calls. Oh, Allan, boy, this is amazing marketing. Well, thank you, Peter, but there's something I've got to acknowledge. Even though you're very praiseworthy of our company, we get criticized in the marketplace by other companies. Can I tell you why? We get criticized because the other companies said that we're only the best in the upscale. Now, that's not correct. We're good in all marketplaces, but I'm sure that's a criticism you folks can live with. They say we're only the very best at the upscale. No, we're good in all price ranges, but I'm sure that doesn't bother you that we're considered see, that's the whole thing. Because that blew their minds. They never expected somebody to say, oh, there's a criticism after they praise me. That's how you never lose a listing.
Yeah, that's what they are used to. Listen, how good I am, how good I am the agent, how good I am, how good is my company. So that's the only point of separation.
Yeah, because it's almost like when agents are taught to tell people, oh, the single biggest reason you should list with me is because you get me. Oftentimes that's the most threatening news of the night. Okay. Because you see the most successful salespeople, they sell something bigger than themselves, like Lux Global. Tony Robbins sells the personal power system. FDR sold the New Deal, Truman the Fair Deal. Kennedy, LBJ, the Great Society, the New Frontier. Elon Musk, the greatest salespeople in the world, they're selling something bigger than themselves. Okay. And when they do that, the person recognizes this person, if they're willing to sell something other than themselves, and my home is other than themselves, that's who I want. I want somebody who can sell things other than themselves. The best way they can sell themselves is to show how they can sell things that are other than themselves. But when they go in there, the only people I know that work as hard trying to sell themselves as a lot of real estate agents are people in prison seeking parole, because that's what they do. Testimonials. I've been working in the gym. I've been working in the kitchen. It's all about, because they think they're selling themselves, but they're defending themselves.
Defending.
And that's why it's wise for people to be with great companies, great marketing, great organizations, great networks like you put together, because it shows people that you transcend yourself. And lifestyles are transcendent. That's why they deserve more than beautiful, lovely, charming, gracious, spacious, and elegant.
Yes, I agree. Now, Alan, based in, in the luxury arena, based on your opinion, what do you think or what do you believe should be the main attribute or skill of a luxury real estate agent? It doesn't matter what market.
The greatest skill is this. As I said, very wealthy homeowners have developed antibodies to agents bragging about themselves, and for a few reasons. First of all, most of the most successful people in the world, they don't see real estate professionals as being at a higher level than they are. Some of them see the real estate as a lower level than heads of banks and stockbrokers or whatever. So it's foolishness to go in there and try to brag. It's the same thing when people call expireds and try to brag on the phone. They're basically saying, I'm the best at what you hate. I'm king rat. So they've got to give up their ego, because 75% of homeowners only bring in one agent, and they'll lose it if they make it about themselves. And so what they have to do is this. They have to show they possess the greatest ability to understand the nuances and the distinctiveness of their home, and they know how to articulate it, and they know how to distribute that into all of the influences. And one of the most important questions is this. If you're a luxury resident, I'm going to say, Peter, would you like me to take a few minutes and share with you the way in which I like to describe your property to my luxury network? That's your whole presentation. But you've got to go to AI before you go and say, what are the 10 best ways to describe a home with all the details? And then you got to take 30 minutes. And then you've got to be able to, then you've got to be like a songbird. Well, here's the way in which I like to describe the view. Peter, this home has vistas and views that Ernest Hemingway couldn't describe. Oh, I like that. Okay. Well, I love the way this works into all of your principal rooms. Your home is second to none in terms of this. You've got to be prepared, because that's your presentation. Because they know that the home doesn't depend upon somebody coming to you and saying, well, before we buy the home, we need to know more about the buyer agent. No, before we buy the home, we need to know more about the listing agent. Gee, we love the kitchen, but can you tell us more about the listing agent? Because people aren't stupid. They know that you have very little to do with how the buyer is going to interpret the lifestyle. But then you want to say to the homeowners, the reason we want to customize this marketing system is because the reason I like to have open houses is that sometimes gives me the best chance to speak directly to the buyers rather, because a lot of the buyer agents, they'll come in, open up the closet and say, I think this is the family room. That's why I want to make sure I'm speaking directly, because what you're saying is this. You've got to influence me. It's range, reach, and influence. You have to influence me. And the only way you can influence people is through images and text. So what are the 3 to 5 greatest reasons somebody's going to be fortunate to acquire this home? Then after they give you all of the reasons, you say this, Peter, now that we've gone over all of the reasons why some would be fortunate to acquire this lifestyle here, or overlooking Diamond Head, is there anything about your property that you think a buyer or a buyer agent might look to criticize that we should be prepared for, so we can strategize over tonight? See, the only way you have access to people is through their concerns. And so the more you involve them in telling the story, and the more that you're able to have a better way, that you have a deeper understanding. That's why you never use the word like comps, because that's disingenuous. See, no, you never say similar homes. It's like, let's take a look at some similar children, because, as I said, because if a buyer agent shows a property and the buyer says, it's not for us, what buyer agent in the world does ever say, well, let's go take a look at some similar homes? No one would pull that nonsense. Why pull it with a homeowner? I don't care if you say, oh, they're all level D, they're all this. There's nuances in every single apartment and condo and co-op in Honolulu. Am I right? There's something different about every single property, and then you've got to make that difference. The fact that the corner of that building doesn't block the sunset after this and that, and those others do, that's worth another $100,000 to you. And so that's what it's all about. It's having the greatest command and being able to put the best possible spin, which is your fiduciary responsibility, while being honest and forthright. And that's the key, because I'll tell you, I was on so many luxury lists, your head would spin, but that was what I did more than anybody that I knew, is I had the ability to be able to describe, I was able to sell back to them. In fact, I'll end with this. I don't think I ever had a homeowner, it happens to a lot of agents occasionally, I don't think I ever had a homeowner say this to me, not say this to me, Allan, you love our home so much, why don't you buy it? That happened every single time, because I would work, and it had nothing to do with pricing. I would work myself into such almost like a trance of love for that property in every possible way that I could tell the truth, but it was the best thing that could be said about everything about the home. Okay, people can't resist that. And you never have to talk about yourself. You never have to talk about yourself. For example, when you're going through the home and the homeowner says, like, more residential than vertical real estate, more horizontal. Oh, Allan, we used to have concrete cemented around the swimming pool and sliding glass doors, but we upgraded to French doors and blue slate. I'd always go like this. That's really going to give us a marketing advantage. Whose idea was it to do that? And one of them would always, oh, that was my idea. See, they can't resist it because I just redeemed the decision. That's really going to give us a marketing. Whose idea was that? As opposed to, oh, that's beautiful. Oh, that's lovely. That's gracious. But you get that over doing hundreds and hundreds of appointments like that. Peter, you're going to make me look, as I've fallen into my own trap, as the biggest mouth. I'm talking too much here, but I get excited about this business.
No, this has been excellent. This has been excellent. I've been, mesmerized with your knowledge, wisdom. I've been learning a lot, and this is one of I've been quiet throughout the interview because I've been absorbing. I don't want to interrupt you because you are on point. You are explaining everything. And I believe the audience is going to benefit a lot from this.
Well, we're all tied together. We're all tied together in this industry in a good way. We never conspire. We never price fix. But this is the greatest cooperative, mutually respectful of any profession in the world. And so it's always a privilege to be able to share ideas because we all get them from one another.
Yeah, definitely. And by the way, for the audience, down below, I'm going to put 2 links for the books, Buyer Be Aware, and also Agent AI Gent. I believe that nowadays, it is not an option to be like savvy AI or savvy tech savvy. It is not mandatory. It is not optional. It is mandatory if we want to elevate our career. So those 2 books, I know that is going to help. Again, a real estate broker for 28 years. I've been learning a lot from Allan, from the books. So I can assure you that it doesn't matter if you're a brand new agent, seasoned, top producer, broker, you need to have those books because you're going to learn a lot. So that's my recommendation. The links are going to be down below. And Allan, if you want to add anything else, I want to be respectful with your time because you
Peter,
know,
how
I
much
know
can
you're
you,
super busy.
Peter, how much can your audience take? Okay, I've been going on and on. No, it's been a privilege. And I'll tell you right now, it's like, God bless you for living where you do. My favorite place to visit in the whole world has always been Hawaii. All the islands, the karma there, the spirit. It's just so magical.
Hi, this is Craig Proctor. Are you freaked out? Are you a realtor who's freaked out about artificial intelligence? Well, don't freak out any longer. Allan Dalton has written this new book called Agent to AI Gent, and you got to pick it up.
Hey, Deanne Golden here. This book is a game changer for all real estate practitioners. This is a playbook.
I don't say this lightly, but this might be one of the most important real estate books of our time. This isn't just another book on how to use AI. There are plenty of those. This is all about priming yourself before you prime your prompt. I've been waiting for this day to come for about 2 months now. My copy of Agent to AI Gent. This is Allan Dalton's latest book. He breaks down about 30 things, the content covers. Let me show you this. All the things you should be using AI for in your business day one. There's case studies in here, and it's your responsibility, if you're going to be serving the consumers and the public, to leverage AI for your clients' benefit.
Hi, my name is Julie Vanderblue, and I lead a top producing team in Connecticut and in New York. This best-selling book, Agent to AI Gent, written by Allan Dalton, former CEO of Realtor.com, brilliant marketing strategist, author, real estate guru, wrote not just a book, but an amazing resource. I have actually heard it called a 5-year head start on the all-important subject of AI.
So this book isn't just to read once. This is a book you study, you highlight it, you write in it, you bookmark it, and you reference it for years.
A lot of realtors I talk to, they're like, oh, AI is going to put real estate agents out of business. No, AI is only going to put agents out of business that don't understand and utilize artificial intelligence. Grab your copy. I just read it this weekend. You're going to be glad you read it too. Thanks for watching this.
Hello, I'm Gino Blafari, and I want to share with you the reason why I purchased 20 copies of this book on AI by none other than Allan Dalton. Okay, former CEO of Realtor.com. Nobody does the research that Allan Dalton does, and you need to go buy this book because AI is going to be so important to you in your real estate career going forward. So go to Amazon right now, order the book by Allan Dalton, Agent to AI.